April 18, 1943. Skies over Bougainville, South Pacific. At 9:34 in the morning, 18 American P-38 Lightning fighters emerge from nowhere, flying at 50 feet altitude, invisible to Japanese radar. They are exactly 1 minute early. 1 minute! After navigating 400 miles across open ocean using only compass, map, and wristwatch. Ahead, 2 Mitsubishi G4M Betty bombers appear on the horizon, escorted by 6 Zero fighters. Inside the first Betty, seated in his chair with white gloves and gripping his katana, is the most hated man in America, Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, the architect of Pearl Harbor. The Americans aren't there by chance. They've broken Japanese naval code JN-25D. They know every detail of Yamamoto's itinerary, the exact time, the precise route, the number of aircraft. This isn't an ordinary combat mission. It's the most calculated execution in modern military history. The operation's name says it all: Operation Vengeance. If you want to understand how a single shot changed the course of the Pacific War, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell. This is the story of the most improbable hunt of World War II. To understand the magnitude of what's about to happen, we need to go back 18 months in time. December 7, 1941, Pearl Harbor. The devastating attack that dragged the United States into war was meticulously planned by one man, Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto. Ironically, Yamamoto knew America better than most Japanese leaders. He had studied at Harvard, traveled extensively throughout the United States, even hitchhiking across the entire country. He witnessed firsthand American industrial might. And because of this, he knew the terrible truth his superiors refused to accept. Japan could not win a prolonged war against the United States. When shown statistics claiming Japan could fight for only 18 months, Yamamoto responded grimly, "It's the same as my own studies indicate." He even warned his leaders, "In the first 6 to 12 months of a war with the United States and Great Britain, I will run wild and win victory upon victory, but after that, I can guarantee nothing." His warnings were ignored. Yamamoto was forced to plan Pearl Harbor, the attack that would make him, in American eyes, the living symbol of Japanese treachery, a target of immeasurable value. April 1943. The Pacific War had reached a critical turning point. 6 months after Pearl Harbor, Japan suffered a catastrophic defeat at Midway, losing 4 frontline aircraft carriers and most of its experienced pilots. The brutal Guadalcanal campaign ended with Japanese evacuation in February. The tide was turning. Yamamoto knew this. In March 1943, he wrote to a friend, "I sense that my life must be completed in the next 100 days." It was almost prophetic. But while Yamamoto contemplated his mortality, the Americans had a secret ace that Japan would never suspect. They had broken Japanese naval code, JN-25. The American intelligence operation, codename Magic, was led by Commander John Rochefort at the Combat Intelligence Unit at Pearl Harbor. Using complex mathematical analysis, IBM punch card tabulating machines, and obsessive dedication, Rochefort and his team of 738 personnel managed to decipher the code, consisting of approximately 33,000 words, phrases, and letters encoded in 5-digit groups. The Japanese periodically altered portions of the code. On April 1, 1943, they introduced version JN-25D. For American cryptanalysts, it was only a temporary setback. 2 weeks later, they had already recovered large portions of the code. April 14, 1943. Pearl Harbor Radio Intercept Station. 2 American military cryptanalysts burst into intelligence officer Edwin Layton's office, placing a deciphered message in his hands. Layton read the document. His eyes widened. He leaped from his chair and ran down the hall to Admiral Chester Nimitz's office, commander of the Pacific Fleet. The intercepted message, designated NTF-13175, was encoded in JN-25D and was picked up by 3 different stations. Lieutenant Colonel Alva Laswell, one of the top cryptanalysts, exclaimed upon deciphering it, "We've hit the jackpot!" The content was surreal in its precision. On April 18, Commander-in-Chief Combined Fleet will visit RXZ, R, and RXP in accordance with the following schedule. It was Yamamoto's complete itinerary. Exact departure and arrival times, aircraft numbers, aircraft types, 2 Betty bombers, 6 Zero fighters, even the number of attendants in his party. Among the cryptanalysts who worked on this message was future U.S. Supreme Court Justice John Paul Stevens, then just another intelligence officer doing his duty. The message reached Secretary of the Navy Frank Knox, who personally delivered it to President Franklin Roosevelt. Roosevelt's response, according to reports, was direct: "Get Yamamoto." But there was an agonizing dilemma. Killing Yamamoto would reveal to the Japanese that the United States had broken their naval code, the most valuable intelligence advantage of the Pacific War. It was an enormous risk. If the Japanese changed their entire encoding system, the Americans would be blind again. Nimitz decided to assume the risk personally. On April 17th, Knox sent an ultra-secret message. Squadron 339 P-38 must at all costs reach and destroy. President attaches extreme importance to mission. The decision was made. Yamamoto had to die. The psychological and strategic value of eliminating the Pearl Harbor architect outweighed the security risks. Nimitz ordered Admiral William Bull Halsey to design and execute the mission. Halsey, known for his aggressiveness, issued his own unambiguous message: "Tally-ho, X, let's get the bastard." The task was delegated to Vice Admiral Mark Mitcher to orchestrate the attack. There was just one gigantic technical problem. The interception point was over 400 miles from the nearest American air base at Guadalcanal. No American fighter in the theater had that range. None except one. The Lockheed P-38 Lightning was an extraordinary aircraft. With its unmistakable twin-boom design and central nacelle for the pilot, the P-38 looked like something from science fiction. Created by brilliant designer Kelly Johnson in response to a 1937 Army specification, the Lightning incorporated radical innovations. Its 2 Allison V1710 engines gave it a top speed of 414 miles per hour and, crucially, range. With special external fuel tanks, the P-38G could fly up to 1,300 miles, far beyond any other fighter available in the Pacific in 1943. The armament was devastating: 4 .50 caliber machine guns and 1 20mm cannon, all mounted in the aircraft's nose, allowing direct fire without need for convergence. It was a lethal and precise platform. But the mission to Bougainville would test the P-38 to its absolute limits. The total round-trip distance would be approximately 1,000 miles, most of it over open ocean. Pilots would fly at 50 feet altitude to avoid Japanese radar. There would be no AWACS radar to guide them, no visual references, just dead reckoning navigation, compass, map, stopwatch. And they would have perhaps 6 minutes of fuel over the target, at full power, before needing to return. Major John Mitchell, commander of the 339th Fighter Squadron, received the most improbable mission of his career. The odds, Mitchell calculated them at 1,000 to 1, just to find Yamamoto's planes at the exact moment and location. 18 P-38 Lightnings were selected, 16 for the attack, 2 as spares. Each aircraft was equipped with special 165-gallon external tanks, crucial for the necessary range. Pilots were divided into two groups. 4 P-38s would form the killer flight, led by Captain Thomas Lanphier, Jr., with orders to attack the 2 Betty bombers. The other 14 P-38s, under Mitchell's command, would intercept the escorting Zero fighters. Navigation would be the key to everything. Mitchell planned an indirect route of nearly 400 miles, bypassing Japanese observation posts in the Solomon Islands, flying at 50 feet over the ocean. He would have to arrive exactly at 9:35 a.m., the precise moment Yamamoto would land at Balalay. An error of 1 minute could mean total failure. Too early, and they'd alert the Japanese. Too late, and Yamamoto would already be on the ground, surrounded by troops. On the morning of April 18, 1943, at 7:25 a.m., the 18 Lightnings took off from Henderson Field, Guadalcanal. Operation Vengeance had begun. The journey was an exercise in almost superhuman precision. Mitchell navigated by dead reckoning for 400 miles across the Pacific Ocean, flying at 50 feet altitude. A single calculation error, an unexpected wind gust, an incorrect compass reading, anything could make them miss the target by dozens of miles. The Lightning propellers whipped the air just meters from the waves. Pilots couldn't be distracted, couldn't make mistakes. Fuel was at absolute limits. There was no margin for error. For most of the journey, there was total radio silence. Pilots flew in tight formation, following Mitchell, trusting completely in his navigation. It was a 3-hour and 10-minute journey of uninterrupted tension. At 9:33 a.m., 1 minute ahead of plan, Mitchell spotted the Bougainville coast. He elevated his P-38 to sweep the sky. Nothing. His heart must have sunk. Had they missed the moment? Had Yamamoto changed his plans? Then, at 9:34 a.m., punctual as a Swiss watch, 2 Betty bombers appeared on the horizon, escorted by 6 Zeros. Yamamoto was known for his obsessive punctuality. That characteristic had just killed him. Mitchell broke radio silence. "Bogies, 11 o'clock, high." What happened in the next 4 minutes is shrouded in controversy that would last decades. What we know for certain is this. Upon spotting the P-38s, the Betty bombers immediately attempted evasive maneuvers. The first Betty, with Yamamoto aboard, dove toward the jungle, desperately trying to reach tree cover. The 6 Zeros attacked the Americans ferociously. Lieutenant Rex Barber, flying a borrowed P-38 called Miss Virginia, pursued the first Betty. Later historical sources, including detailed analysis of all surviving American and Japanese pilot accounts, indicate it was Barber who fired the fatal burst. The .50 caliber bullets tore through the Betty's right wing, hitting the engine. Flames erupted. The bomber plunged violently into Bougainville's dense jungle. The second Betty, carrying Vice Admiral Matome Ugaki and other officers, was shot down by Lieutenant Besby Holmes, crashing into the sea. During the confusion of aerial combat, Lieutenant Raymond Hine was shot down, possibly by Zero pilot Kenji Yanagiya. It was the only American loss of the mission. The surviving P-38s, with critically low fuel, turned and raced back to Guadalcanal, again flying at minimum altitudes. 6 minutes over the target, exactly as planned. The next day, April 19th, a Japanese rescue team found the wreckage of Yamamoto's Betty in Bougainville's jungle. What they discovered would become legend. Yamamoto was still seated in his chair, thrown from the aircraft, but still strapped in his seatbelt. His white-gloved hand still gripped his katana, his samurai sword. Reports described his appearance as being in a state of great dignity. The autopsy revealed 2 bullet wounds, one in the shoulder and another under his lower left jaw, passing through to his right eye. The medical conclusion was unequivocal. Yamamoto was dead before the plane hit the jungle. A single bullet, fired probably from hundreds of yards away from a P-38 at combat speed, had instantly killed the most important man in the Imperial Japanese Navy. His body was carefully recovered. Given the gravity of the loss, Yamamoto's death was not revealed until May 21, more than a month later. The Japanese government announced only that the admiral had died during combat operations at the front. The entire nation went into mourning. Yamamoto's remains were transported back to Japan aboard the super battleship Musashi, his last flagship, in May 1943. A state funeral was held in Tokyo on June 5, drawing 1 million mourners. Part of his ashes was interred at Tama Cemetery in Tokyo, the other part at his ancestral home in Nagaoka. Yamamoto's death was a devastating psychological blow. He was more than just a military commander. He was a symbol of leadership and strategic excellence. Some historical reports suggest that Japanese naval personnel morale plummeted after his death. Others argue the strategic impact was limited. After all, by 1943, Yamamoto was already sick and exhausted. But there was something deeper at play. The message sent by Operation Vengeance was clear and unmistakable. No Japanese leader was safe. No place was beyond American reach. The United States had the capability and the will to execute surgical operations of deadly precision. And the Japanese never suspected the complete truth. They never discovered that the Americans had broken JN-25D. The Japanese investigation blamed the Army for retransmitting Yamamoto's itinerary in a low-level code. Inter-service rivalries saved the American secret. But Operation Vengeance was almost sabotaged by vanity and politics. In the months following the mission, a bitter controversy erupted among American pilots over who had actually shot down Yamamoto's plane. Captain Thomas Lanphier, Jr. publicly claimed full credit, alleging in his report that he had hit Yamamoto's Betty, blowing off its right wing. Lanphier wanted a political career after the war, and having killed Yamamoto would be his ultimate credential. But Rex Barber and other mission pilots contested vehemently. Later evidence, including testimonies from surviving Japanese pilots and detailed analysis of flight trajectories, indicated Lanphier was in no position to have shot down Yamamoto's bomber. Barber's P-38, Miss Virginia, returned with over 100 bullet holes, physical evidence of intense combat. Officially, the Army credited Lanphier and Barber with half a kill each. But the controversy didn't cease. Lanphier continued claiming full credit until his death in 1987. Most newspaper obituaries credited him with killing Yamamoto. Barber contested this until his own death in 2001. Another mission pilot, Lieutenant Julius Jacobson, commented in 1997, "There were 15 of us who survived, and as far as who did the effective shooting, who cares? There is glory for the whole team." The real threat, however, wasn't pilot rivalry. It was intelligence security. In October 1943, Time magazine published a detailed article about Operation Vengeance, mentioning Lanphier by name. The U.S. Navy was outraged. It was a serious breach of operational security. As a result of this leak, Major John Mitchell's nomination for the Medal of Honor was downgraded to the Navy Cross, the same award subsequently presented to all killer flight pilots. The Navy feared too many details might reveal code-breaking capabilities to the Japanese. To make it appear fortuitous, American officials repeatedly sent P-38 patrols to Balalai in the following weeks, creating the impression that long-range missions were routine. They never made public statements suggesting they knew Yamamoto had been killed until long after. The strategy worked. The Japanese modified small parts of JN-25 periodically, but never changed the basic code system. They simply couldn't believe their naval system could have been compromised so completely. Not until September 1945, after the war ended, did the United States finally publicly reveal that Operation Vengeance had been based on decrypted communications. The impact of Yamamoto's death on the war remains debated. His Pearl Harbor operation was audacious and brilliant, but his poor strategy at Midway, 6 months later, destroyed Japan's elite carrier force, ironically, also due to American code-breaking. By 1943, Yamamoto was a sick and exhausted man. Perhaps he might have developed a better late-war naval strategy than the disasters at the Philippine Sea and late Gulf, or perhaps not. Not even the Pearl Harbor architect could save Japan from defeat. But the operation's significance transcended military strategy. It established precedents that resonate to this day. Operation Vengeance was a targeted killing, a surgical elimination of a specific enemy leader based on decrypted intelligence. Legally, there was no ambiguity. Yamamoto was an enemy soldier in uniform, flying in an enemy military aircraft, attacked by uniformed U.S. military personnel in marked military aircraft. According to the laws of war, it was completely legal. But politically and ethically, it marked a moment. The decision to authorize Yamamoto's assassination was handled remarkably routinely, passing through the military chain of command without formal presidential review or Justice Department analysis. April 18, 1943. 18 P-38 Lightnings. 1 man dead. A war changed forever. Operation Vengeance remains one of the most extraordinary aviation feats of World War II. John Mitchell's navigation, 400 miles across open ocean at 50 feet altitude, arriving 1 minute ahead of the planned target, was a supreme feat of piloting skill. The courage of pilots who flew this mission, knowing they had fuel for only 6 minutes of combat before facing a 1,000-mile return, is breathtaking. But above all, Operation Vengeance demonstrated the transformative power of intelligence. The ability to break enemy codes, to read their most intimate secrets, proved as lethal as any weapon in the American arsenal. Today, the wreckage of Yamamoto's Betty still lies in Bougainville's jungle, a silent monument to the day fate caught up with the man who attacked Pearl Harbor. Vengeance, as Bull Halsey said, was served. If you enjoyed this documentary, share it with your history-loving friends. And leave in the comments, do you think Yamamoto's elimination significantly changed the course of the war? Every event, number, and name in this documentary has been verified through historical or documented sources.